Hello students, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will go through the NCERT question and answers from the chapter The Colonial Era in India. I will explain them in a very simple way so that you can easily write them in your exams. Now, let us first start with the big questions given at the beginning of the chapter. What is colonialism? You can write the answer as colonialism is the practice where one country takes control of another region, establishing settlements there and imposing its political, economic and cultural systems. Next question. What drew European powers to India? European powers were drawn to India because of its great wealth and valuable resources. India was famous for spices, textiles and other goods that were in high demand in Europe. This attracted European traders to come to India. What was India's economic and geopolitical standing before and during the colonial period? Here you need to compare two time periods before the colonial period, that is before British rule, and during the colonial period, that is when the British were ruling India. So before the colonial period, India was a prosperous and powerful economy with a large share in the world's GDP. It had strong trade networks and was famous for valuable goods like spices, textiles, ivory and gems. During the colonial period, however, India's economic and geopolitical position declined. Its resources were exploited by European powers, especially the British, for their own benefit. Traditional industries weakened and India's economy was gradually brought under British control and used for their own benefit. Next question. How did the British colonial domination of India impact the country? Here, impact means the changes or effects that happened because of colonial domination. You need to think about how British rule affected different areas like India's economy, industries, agriculture and the lives of people. In simple terms, the question is asking what happened to India because of British rule and whether those changes were positive or negative. So you can write the answer like British colonial domination greatly affected India. The British used India's resources for their own benefit, which weakened the economy and led to the decline of traditional industries. Heavy land revenue policies created hardship for peasants and many people faced exploitation. Politically, India lost its independence and came under foreign rule. Now let's revise the NCERT question and activities given at the end of the chapter. First question. What is colonialism? Give 3 different definitions based on the chapter or on your knowledge. So here you need to understand the meaning of colonialism and explain it in 3 different ways. Instead of giving just one definition, you should describe colonialism from different perspectives. So you can write the answer as colonialism can be understood in different ways. First one, colonialism is the practice where one country takes control of another region, settles there and imposes its political, economic and cultural systems. Then, it can also be defined as a system in which a powerful country exploits the resources, wealth and people of another country for its own benefit. It can also be said as colonialism may also be seen as foreign domination where a nation loses its independence and is ruled and controlled by an external power. Second question. Colonial rulers often claimed that their mission was to civilize the people they ruled. Based on the evidence in this chapter, do you think this was true in the case of India? Why or why not? So here you need to examine the claim made by the British that they came to civilize India. Civilize means to make a society more developed or advanced. You need to think critically here. Was British rule actually beneficial for India or was this just an excuse for control? Based on what you have learned in this chapter, you should decide whether this statement is true or not and give reasons to support your answer. So you can write the answer as the claim that colonial rulers came to civilize India is not true because their actions show that their main aim was exploitation. By using India's resources for their own benefit, they weakened the economy and caused the decline of traditional industries. At the same time, heavy land revenue policies placed a great burden on peasants, while their policies also disrupted Indian society and affected traditional systems of education. Thus, instead of improving the country, their rule caused harm, which clearly does not support the idea of civilizing India. Now, third question. How was the British approach to colonizing India different from earlier European powers like the Portuguese or the French? So here you need to compare the British method of colonizing India with that of earlier European powers like the Portuguese and the French. We can write the answer as the British approach to colonizing India was different from earlier European powers like the Portuguese and the French. While the Portuguese and the French mainly established trading centers along the coast, the British went further by gradually taking control of Indian territories. They interfered in local political affairs, fought wars and annexed regions to establish their rule. In this way, the British moved from trade to full political control, effectively colonizing India. Next question. Indians funded their own subjugation. What does this mean in the context of British infrastructure projects in India like the railway and telegraph networks? So here you need to understand the meaning of the statement Indians funded their own subjugation in the context of British projects like railways and telegraphs. Subjugation means being controlled or ruled by others. You need to think about who paid for those developments and who actually benefited from them. So here the question is asking, how did Indians end up paying for systems that were used to control and exploit them? Answer. The statement Indians funded their own subjugation means that the money used to build infrastructure like railways and telegraph networks in India largely came from Indian resources. But these projects mainly served British interest. The British collected taxes and revenue from Indians and used this money to finance such developments. While these systems appeared beneficial, they were primarily designed to help the British transport raw materials, move troops quickly, and strengthen their control over India. Thus, Indians were effectively paying for systems that helped the British dominate them. What does the phrase divide and rule mean? Give examples of how this was used by the British in India. Divide and rule means creating differences or conflicts among people so that they remain divided and cannot unite against the ruler. Here, you also need to give examples from history showing how the British applied this policy in India. The phrase divide and rule means a policy of creating divisions among people so that they remain weak and cannot unite against the ruler. In India, the British used this policy in the following ways. They encouraged divisions between different religious communities such as Hindus and Muslims, and they promoted differences based on caste and social groups. They also treated different regions and groups unequally, sometimes favoring one group over another. These actions created distrust among Indians and prevented them from uniting against British rule, which helped the British maintain control. Next question. Choose one area of Indian life such as agriculture, education, trade or village life. How was it affected by colonial rule? Can you find any signs of those changes still with us today? Express your ideas through a short essay, a poem, a drawing or a painting. So here you need to choose one area of Indian life such as agriculture, education, trade or village life and explain how it was affected by British rule. You need to describe what changes happened during the colonial period in that area. Then you also need to think about the present or any of those changes still visible in India today. Finally, you can express your ideas in a creative way like a short essay, poem, drawing or painting. Here I have chosen agriculture to explain the impact of British rule. You can choose any other area like education, trade or village life and write your answer accordingly. Agriculture in India was deeply affected by British rule. The British introduced heavy taxes on land, and farmers had to pay these taxes even if their crops were poor or failed. This created a lot of pressure on them, and many farmers fell into debt. In many places, farmers were forced to grow cash crops like indigo instead of food crops, which reduced the production of food and affected their daily life. These changes weakened the traditional farming system and made farmers depend more on moneylenders. Even today, some of these effects can still be seen. Many farmers still face debt and financial problems, and farming is still uncertain in many areas. Thus, British rule had a long-lasting impact on Indian agriculture, and its effects are still seen today. Imagine you are a reporter in 1857. Write a brief news report on Rani Lakshmibai's resistance at Jhansi. Include a timeline or storyboard showing how the rebellion began, spread, and ended, highlighting key events and leaders. So now you have to imagine yourself as a reporter in 1857 reporting on the rebellion at Jhansi led by Rani Lakshmibai. You need to write a short news report describing the events, and to make it clear and organized, you should also create a timeline or storyboard showing how the rebellion began, how it spread, and how it ended. Make sure to mention the key events and leaders involved. Imagine an alternate history where India was never colonized by European powers. Write a short story of about 300 words exploring how India might have developed on its own path. So now we have to imagine a what-if scenario. What if India had never been colonized by European powers? You need to write a short story of about 300 words describing how India might have developed on its own. Think about areas like economy, education, technology, culture, trade, and governance, and you can be creative, but make sure your story shows a logical picture of India's independent growth. If India had never been colonized, it would have developed in its own way without foreign control. Different kingdoms ruled different regions, but instead of being taken over by outside powers, they slowly built strong relationships with each other. Over time, these kingdoms united to form a stable and powerful nation. Trade played a very important role in India's growth. Indian merchants traveled across seas and traded spices, cotton, silk, and other goods with distant lands. Indian products were famous for their quality, which made the country wealthy and respected. Many cities became busy centers of trade, culture, and learning. Education also improved greatly. Inspired by ancient centers of learning, new schools and universities were established. Students studied science, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. Old knowledge was preserved while new ideas were encouraged, helping the country progress in many fields. This led to new discoveries and inventions. Agriculture became stronger with better irrigation and farming techniques. Farmers used their traditional knowledge along with new methods to increase food production. Industries like textiles, metalwork, and handicrafts grew steadily, providing employment to many people. Social changes also took place. Reformers worked to reduce inequalities and promote education for all sections of society. People respected their traditions but were also open to positive changes. India developed its own system of governance where leaders focused on the welfare of the people. Without foreign control, the country remained independent and self-reliant. By the 20th century, India had become a strong and respected nation. Next question. Role play. Enact a historical discussion between a British official and an Indian personality like Dadabhai Naoroji on the British colonial rule in India. So now you need to do a role play, which means acting out a conversation between two people from history. One is a British official and the other is an Indian personality like Dadabhai Naoroji. The discussion should be about British rule in India. You need to think about what each person would say. The British official may defend colonial policies, while Dadabhai Naoroji will explain how British rule affected India negatively, like economic drain and exploitation. Next question. Explore a local resistance movements like tribal, peasant or princely from your state or region during the colonial period. Prepare a report or poster describing what was the specific trigger, if any. Now, you need to explore a local resistance movements from your area during British rule. This could be a tribal uprising, a peasant revolt, or a princely state resisting the British. So, you need to prepare a report or poster describing the movement. And in the first question, you need to explain what happened that made people say we must resist the British. A trigger is something that made people rise up. It could be a new tax, a law, British interference, or unfair treatment. Here I have explained the Santhal rebellion. You can choose any other movement and explain it in a similar way. Here the trigger was loss of land and exploitation by money lenders and British support to outsiders. Second question, who led the movement? This question is asking about the leader of the resistance movement, like who organized or guided the people in fighting against the British. So here the movement was led by Sidhu Murmu and Kanhu Murmu. What were their demands? So here you need to explain what the people wanted during the resistance movement. Their demands or the specific changes or actions they were asking for. For example, stopping unfair taxes, protecting their land, ending certain British policies, or gaining more rights and freedom. So here the answer would be the Santals demanded an end to the exploitation by landlords and moneylenders, return of their lands and protection of their rights, freedom from unfair British laws and control, a system where they could live and govern themselves peacefully. How did the British respond? So here you need to explain what the British did when the resistance movement happened. Did they try to stop it with soldiers, punish the people, make new laws, or negotiate with the leaders? Here the British responded with strong military action. They sent troops to suppress the rebellion and used force to control the Santals. Many Santals were killed and their leaders including Sidhu Murmu and Kanhu Murmu were captured or killed. After crushing the rebellion, the British brought the area under stricter control to prevent such uprisings in the future. Next, how is this event remembered today? Example, local festivals, songs, monuments. So, how people remember the resistance movement today? Are there any festivals, songs, stories or monuments that celebrate the leaders or the event? The Santal rebellion is remembered with great respect among tribal communities. The bravery of leaders like Sidhu Murmu and Kanhu Murmu is honored through songs, stories and local traditions. Every year, people observe Hool Divas on 30th June to commemorate the uprising. Cultural programs, dances and gatherings are organized to remember the sacrifice of the Santal people. Statues and memorials have also been built in some places to honor the leaders and keep their memory alive. So with this, we have completed the NCERT question and answers for the chapter The Colonial Era in India. I hope you found it easy to understand. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. We will see you again in our next video. Bye bye.